What's up? We apologize for the late start. I guess it's both of our faults at this point. But we are here live, 15 with the HB. I am UB, episode 9 to the 6, joined by...
What up, guys? It's HB. You're coming in live for the 15. Got a hot topic this week, as we have had for the past, probably 3 months or so with the Twinkcup.
So, I'm sure you guys are all wondering what are you going to be talking about this week, and it's the Twinkcup again, but I assure you, if you're participating or even curious about it, you definitely want to listen to this. But before we spoil the lead, you know what we got to do, Buns?
And gotta give our shout-outs. Yubi,
yes,
who's your shout-out to?
Alright, I actually have a few. I need to open up a window so I can give the right person the right shout-out. Alright, the first one is going to go to the Booty Bay nightclub. They are a new guild, and they are looking for a Resto Druid FC for the Twinkcup. It seems like that's one of the last things they're looking for. So I know a lot of people have been hitting me up, posting on TI, and looking for a team. If you're a Druid, you happen to play Resto, and you're confident in your FC skills, hit them up. They can be found on Twitter at BBNC Rollout, or you can go and check the BIS Nation page. I retweeted it, so it'll be close to the top. My second one is a little bit different. I was browsing through the GG19's thread, and I noticed one application by Baldertron, and he was talking about like things he does and such. And I noticed one thing that kind of caught my eye. Dude skates. And for those of you that know me, I spend a significant portion of my life rollerblading. And it's always nice to see a fellow fruit booter in the mix. So shout out to Baldy and a fellow fruit booter, because we are few and far between. So you get my second shout out, Baldy. And now it's to you, Buns.
Alright, well, I'm going to give my shout-out to someone who I've been controversial with the last so often. It's going to lead us right into our cast today. But I'm going to give a shout-out to Merm, because I think that he made a good decision. Merm made a post on Twinkinfo on June 3rd, establishing two huge things going into the Twinkcup. One, he made a draft committee where he had leaders of the community come up with some rules that they felt were important to be implemented in the Twinkcup. And two, he had a rules committee that went over the draft to be able to see if these rules make sense, and if it comes from a non-biased point of view that these rules make sense to have, then they're going to go through. So kind of like a keep-and-check committee to make sure if the rules
That's
pass.
awesome. And that seems like something the community at large was definitely in favor for.
So big shout out there, and that leads us right into our cast today, because guess who was thrown on the draft committee?
Certainly not you. So who else? Who's going to be our special guest for the day?
Well, you're speaking to him, so hopefully you find me interesting. So let's give a shout out here. I'll keep going on this post a little bit here. So I'm going to actually read you the quote here. So it says, "The Twinkcup will have a rules committee consisting of Sipe, Drugs, Carr, Justpone, Daedric Death, myself, and possibly 7th unconfirmed member." And at this point, I believe that the last 3 people on the committee are Schematics, Mocha, and... hang on, I can find it. Can't remember it off the top of my head here. It was Schematics, Mocha, and one more person. And Rusks. That was the last person.
Okay, so that seems like a wide swath, or it catches a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds. So it does seem that would fit in, so you can get everyone's point of view, or at least as many people as you can expect on the committee.
And the draft committee at this point is Pizza, Honey Buns, Conk, and Muskie.
Wait, I'm not sure. What is the draft committee?
So the draft committee, which is a part that I'm in, that we're going to be talking about today, is the people that actually come up with the physical rules that we feel need to be implemented. And the rules committee is going to look over the draft and say, hey, this rule makes sense, or hey, this rule doesn't make sense, and they're going to have the final say to what the definite rules are.
Interesting. So that you even got a set of checks and balances in there too, not just a wide array of opinions. I like that.
Yeah, I thought it was great call by Merm there, and I think that I wouldn't have thought about that second part, and I think it's a smart idea. So it was a really good job there by Merm having that balance
Absolutely.
there. So, and I think that he did a good job at picking the committee. For both, I think that you really have a spread out variety there. And between Pizza, myself, and Muskie, we've actually talked about just about everything that we want to hit for the draft, even though the draft needs to be submitted by the 12th. We've talked about just about all the main points we wanted to go over.
Okay.
So this whole cast is going to be talking about these points and what is being brought up to the table. And this is super important for discussion, for talking it over, and considering that, for teams playing in the Cup, these are definitely rules that could impact you.
Yeah, and Buns, I think you're going to have to get me this cast earlier than normal. I have to put this one up tomorrow so people can have time to listen to it and maybe respond to it on TI. Otherwise, it's going to go up on the 11th, and that's cutting it a little close.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Or the VOD link or something, one of the two, or both. All right. Nonetheless, that's not a huge problem. Anyways, so where do we start here? Where do I want to start here? Where do I think is the good point? Because I actually have it written out, some of the things that we talked about. Why don't we start here with the big thing that I've been ranting on? Ferals are banned from arenas.
Oh, they were only at first just banned from Warsong Gulch, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what precipitated that change?
The one-shot capability.
Okay.
It was pretty much a no-brainer for everyone. Everyone pretty much came to the agreement that no one wanted Ferals on the arena thing. We feel that in a player that can really maximize the class's potential, getting a re-stealth, it forces Trinket just about every time on an opener. And the ability to re-stealth and kill after on a second Trinket with points is pretty much a one-shot.
Fair enough.
So we didn't want that gameplay. But going off of that, why don't I tell you some other things that have been implemented into Arena, because there's some things I think people are not expecting. There's two big things I don't think people are ready for, but but I think that are in favor. One, the second thing we were looking at in Arena perspective is there's two things here. One, I think that most people are here for the Warsong Gulch part of the tournament. And to have a Warsong Gulch team, you have to have a Warsong Gulch team to submit an arena team. And it's not like you can have one or the other, and it's not like you can participate in arenas and not do Warsong Gulch. So pretty much the Warsong Gulch teams are asked to submit an arena team. So last year we were sitting there, and most of the teams did not care whatsoever about the 3v3s. Even though there was a little bit of money there or whatnot. Most people didn't care. They did not care whatsoever, and that was kind of the consensus that we were drawing in this conversation. We were like, well, people didn't really care all that much about it. What can we do to spice it up a little more? Maybe make it more enjoyable for the community and for more players. And we got a few things. So the first thing that we came to is we're like, well, there's some classes right now that are obviously dominating in 19 arenas, most notably Resto Shaman, Arms Warrior is top tier comp right there. I mean, Satyr is just absurd in arenas right now. So what did we do? There's no Satyr allowed in arena.
Now this I need to ask, and I know there's ways to track it, and the forums there's been people saying it's super easy to track, you only have so many buffs, debuffs, whatever, procs to track. And then other people are you really expect others to be able to manage that. So what sort of things do you have in place, and what are the repercussions for someone or a team that decides to use it?
Sure, I think that's an excellent point to bring up. And I think that while there are a lot of people concerned about people abusing that or cheating the rules or trying to find a way, you have to understand that this is on a very public tournament format now, and there's going to be thousands of people watching. Every team's going to be paying attention. Whatever the rule is, whatever the rule ends up being, on procs, etc., you have to understand that all it take would be a screenshot for you to lose a series.
But is that all it's going to be? They lose that series?
Well, I'm just saying that it's extreme. Well, I think that the rule is going to be at this point, if someone gets caught like cheating the rules of the enchants, and there's what's going to end up happening is you're going to have someone in the spectator point of view that's not streaming, but someone that's in the game that's going to have. This is Warsong perspective, and I haven't really gotten to Warsong, but I'll just give you a little bit of a prequel here, a preview. Is you're going to have someone in the Warsong Gulch having both warriors targeted or on focus, and if they get the rules are a little different in Warsong, so wait for it. But if you get double Satyr in Warsong, you're disqualified. You lose the game. You lose that game if you get caught with it. So the ramifications, it's like, okay, if you cheat, and you're saying that people are going to cheat, if you get caught cheating, it's instantly caught out. And it could be anything from... Good. It could be both the spectators are going to be watching for it. If another team just submits a screenshot like that, you're instantly out. And whatever the rule ends up being for whatever reason, it's really not such a hard thing as people think to enforce, because the repercussions are really serious. And I don't think you're going to have people cheating, and it's really easy to identify if someone does. You just see an
I would
extra
hope so,
buff.
at least, yeah. And if you're going to have extra people, just looking out for it, and I didn't even think about the fact that, especially with the Gamers League coming in, Blizzard getting behind it, there's going to be a lot of eyes on this tourney. And I mean, just from the fact you have the chance of losing as a repercussion, and also, do you really, for the teams involved, do you really want everyone watching to forever know you as those douchebags or bitches that tried to cheat and got caught, or just tried to cheat, period? Like,
yeah, exactly.
You're in this to win. At least man up and try and win fairly, like hopefully everyone else is doing.
Exactly, and I just don't think, I saw the concern there a few weeks ago, but it's just an easy thing to enforce, in my opinion. Whatever the rule is, it's just so easy. You break the rule, there's going to be a lot of people watching you, you're going to get caught, and you're going to lose the game for it. So it's easy.
And screenshots are forever.
Yeah, really. Those things don't get lost on the internet. But going back to so putting that in arena perspective, in an arena perspective, it's really easy to see if someone gets a proc. It's going to be blatantly obvious.
Even just watching health bars, it should be pretty obvious.
But going off of that, Satyr's not the only thing that's banned from arenas. And this is where it gets interesting. Flintlock's banned from arenas, Landslide's banned from arenas, and Gnomish X-Ray Scope, on top of Crusader. So we basically said, what are all the really OP proc enchants right now that we want to take away from arenas to make it more viable for more comps and more classes and combinations to be allowed in the tournament? And those were the big four that we hit right off the bat.
Now, just from an outsider's perspective, how are you going to go about managing something like Flintlocks or the Scope? Is that going to be the same way, like check for proc? Or okay.
And once again, it's a really easy thing to enforce. People are going to be looking for it. There's going to be people in the game looking for it. There's going to be thousands of people watching. Both teams in the arenas both have the ability to screenshot too. So enforcing it's not going to be a hard thing. It's going to really hurt your team if you get caught cheating, instantly losing that game, possibly a series. That hasn't been determined yet, the actual repercussion. I think at this point we've said that you lose the game, not the series. But
see, I'm obviously not on the rules committee, but if someone's going to go through with all of the... Like, the rules are in place. We want this to be a competitive, fair atmosphere, which, that's the whole reason these rules are put in place, to make it as fair and skill-based as possible. If a team's going to go ahead and try and cheat, why even allow them to continue in the series?
I think that and going off of what you said, I think it can go either way. I think it's one of the things we'll have to clarify going before the 12th here. But there's going to be serious repercussions either way for doing that. And obviously, we want to make it to the point where no one's cheating, etc. And I don't think it's going to be a hard thing to enforce. I'm not worried about it because of how well mapped out we have it. That whatever the rules are, people are going to obey it, or you're going to face serious repercussions for cheating.
Yeah, and the repercussions should fit the crime, and in something like this, that is so much work has been put through so many people, Merm especially for getting it all going, to have it tainted by like, all right, well, we cheated one game, we'll lose that one, whatever, and then they go ahead the next game. What if they end up winning the series? I mean, that technically means a cheater won the series.
Right. I agree. So it's definitely something that we can talk about, and I think that you're correct. I think it should be the series because of how the ramifications are, and people need to understand like how serious people are, want these rules enforced. So now here is the next thing. Actually, let me see, I cover everything for... Okay, let's talk about the last big thing that's going to be talked about for arenas.
Okay.
And this is huge. This is huge right here. This is the biggest thing that we're going to talk about by far, possibly in the tournament, but definitely for arenas. Which is weird, because I think that the last two implements, you would think, wow, those are pretty big changes. I think that they're needed changes. Here's the last one. So, bringing this to the Warsong perspective too, we were talking about how we want tied series and Warsongs to be handled.
Oh,
now, not getting into that yet, but one thing we decided is we do not want Warsong Ultra or Wrathy Basin to be the deciding factor in a Warsong.
You mean Eye of the Storm?
Or Eye of the Storm rather. Thank you.
Okay.
We don't want that being a determining factor in who wins a Warsong Ultra series, because it's not part of the culture in 19s. People don't play it. There's no point in doing that. You're talking about two Battlegrounds, too, that at 19 are really pretty poorly suited for the bracket when you're talking about having to stand there in EOTs rather than cap flags. Stand there and get the bases. Or AB, where the map is the size of Africa. So...
And you're running around on your Tootsies like, hey, guys, I'll get there in about... Well, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. So I guess that's a little bit of a prequel to that. But with that same mindset, there was serious discussion that was brought over into the arenas. And the interesting part is that the entire community is going to have a direct say on what the outcome is on this, in my opinion, if it goes through. There is serious consideration right now for the arenas to be 2v2 rather than 3v3.
Okay, you have my attention, because that I definitely did not expect.
There's serious consideration right now for the arenas to be 2v2 rather than 3v3, and for the sole reason of what I just talked about right there. No one plays 3v3s at 19s. Aside from big tournaments, no one plays them. It's not like you're queuing up with threes every night with two buddies and you're doing it. It's just not the culture of the bracket. So there was a big opinion that was being weighed saying like, well, we didn't want EOTs and AB to be played because no one plays it. It's not the part of the culture of the bracket. It doesn't reflect the culture of the bracket. So we're sitting here and we're like, well, from a threes perspective, I think either way, I think we did a good job eliminating some of the huge proc chance. And for either 3v3 or 2v2, it's going to balance the scene a lot more and make it more viable for more comps to be run in 3v3 and 2v2. But the catch is that no one really plays 3v3 except for tournament mode at 19. So with more people appealing and playing twos on a day-to-day basis, we wanted to put in the consideration that people may want twos to be played.
So I get the whole that, the culture right now, and there are several factors for that. That twos is what more people do if they want arenas. But what about those that'll be like, well, threes is just inherently a more balanced atmosphere for arenas? Or do you disagree with that as well?
Can you say that again? Holy cow, I blanked. Jesus. I was in Africa. I was reading Twitch chat. I was trying to read through the comments here. I got a lot of feed.
That I understand the whole movement behind twos, and especially when you put it in the context of, well, why would you decide, say, the battleground portion on something that the bracket doesn't do, and then have the arena portion be decided on something that the bracket at large doesn't do, which would be threes, and instead have them do twos? But what would you say for the people that are like, but threes is more balanced? It allows different comps to be played that maybe twos would restrict. Or do you feel like twos is actually the better way to go? Not outside of just it being, what is normally done.
Yeah, and I think that, first off, let me say two or three things before I hit your point. One, I think that the first thing you mentioned again, with all the enchants taken out, with ferals taken out, both scenes become way more balanced just because those procs are negated. You're going to have more steady damage rather than burst and proc-related burst. So that's been taken out. That sets up either one of these scenes to have a lot more success and more comps. The second thing to go with this is something that I haven't mentioned at this point. I'm going to bring it up, but it goes into the Warsong Gulch series again. And we also came to the decision that no one wanted arena seeding to determine a Warsong Gulch series. So with that in mind,
Okay.
if you place winning a arena series is not going to have an impact on your team winning a Warsong Gulch series. And we pretty much all came to that conclusion, and I was so happy on that decision right there. That might have been the big 1-2 for me right there. I was like,
I know that was a
thank
stickler
you.
when we had a cast. I forget if it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm excited to hear what you guys came to, but continue on this train of thought for now.
So with that in mind, keep in mind that whatever the outcome is of arenas, while there is still money on the line, and there's 3 BisNation t-shirts out there for someone to grab, whether it's 2v2 or 3v3 right now, it does have an impact on who wins that part of the tournament, but it's not going to affect the Warsong part of the tournament. So there's not a ton of stress on that, and I think that's great because it doesn't... People care way more about Warsong Gulch than they do arenas. So to have arenas reflect on an outcome of a Warsong Gulch series, we all came to the conclusion that that was inaccurate of the culture of the bracket, that we should not have that in place. So while the one, you know, they're kind of 2 different tournaments at the same time, but we felt that they shouldn't interact with one another. So going off of that, the third thing really is like, it's at 19s, most classes don't have serious cooldowns. So when you get to 3v3, even though that damage has been completely, a lot of classes that what's the right word, that they benefit off of having these proc enchants have been really toned down. But at the same time, you also don't have serious defensives. While there's still so at the same time, there will be bursts. There'll still be bursts in 3s. There's not going to be a ton of CC in either 2s or 3s. But the argument's really going to come down to it's going to come down to a community vote at the end of the day. I think that's what we're proposing to MERM to make a poll on TI to ask the community if they want 2s or 3s. Because in 2s, I think that it's arguably, you could have also a huge influx of comps. And here's another thing to go with this too. Another thing that's being considered, if it goes to 2s, is to allow another team from each Warsong Gulch team to submit and have 2 teams. And that's something else that's being considered. To have 2 teams from every Warsong Gulch team submit.
I have a question for you, Buns, and I just want to address stream chat real quick. Living, we're doing arenas now. Warsong Gulch BGs we'll be getting to in a little bit. When we did a cast, again, I'm not sure if it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, but you mentioned how you thought it would be interesting if there was a set comp for arenas, whether it's like Rogue Mage Priest or, you know, whatever it be. Has there been any further consideration to that, or have you guys moved away from it and you want the diversity?
We moved away from it because we took away the things that we felt made arenas unbalanced and allowed for more comp diversity, and we also took away from the fact that winning the arena series is its own, in our mind, it's its own tournament, if that makes sense. It's its own thing.
It's a separate entity.
Right. So we didn't want teams... We took that pressure off of teams to feel like we really have to win this. And like I felt if arena seeding determined Warsong Gulch series, then I feel like everyone would have come out with the most flavor of the month classes on these proc classes. But now we've opened the floor, is what I felt like.
See, there's no pressure.
There's no pressure to win the arena tournament. It gives people room to try out comps that they think maybe could work. We've made the floor more balanced for everyone to try things out and let other classes that may have been restricted by other classes having so much more benefit from the procs. We feel like that this is a better look here for arenas. And I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to 2 decisions. ideally, we're going to propose to Merm and the committee that there's a vote for 2v2 or 3v3. And that's going to come totally community-based on Twinkinfo. On twinkinfo.com, there's going to be a poll, and most likely determining if it's 2v2 or 3v3. And then the side thing with that is if it goes to 2v2, we were also considering, like I just said a few minutes ago, having a second team from each roster, because there were so many people wanting to get on arenas. It would allow another player from your team to get on that.
I like that. I really do. I mean, especially since it's going to come down to the community. And you know what else I really like? It's that we have the option now to shape it to make it more fair by taking out, all the procs that you talked about and the weapon enchants, removing ferals. And I think that's something that gives the Twinkcup such a unique flavor, outside the obvious of, well, it's not an endgame competition. Where we're actively working and we're making it as fair and balanced as possible given what Blizzard has provided us to work with.
Right. And even, right there, what you just said, even though this tournament has turned into something bigger than I think anyone has expected, and it's pretty publicly viewed on a WoW basis, it's really cool that we're trying to maintain and keep the culture of the bracket rather than having the bracket be morphed by the publicity that the tournament's getting. Because right now, there's things that, none of those enchants that we banned have been scaled correctly. Or if they have, they need to be reconsidered. And then, it's, it almost, in a weird way, it almost lets Blizzard know, hey, this is a tournament we're having. These things are not included for this reason. Maybe there's a correlation here, you guys could look into. And I think it's good that you have that, it's important that you keep the culture of the bracket when making these decisions, and that's what we were trying to do based on the draft committee that we were having. And as we continue going here, we also, some of the other changes we want to keep in mind is we did not, especially in the arena perspective, we changed the meta by taking out those enchants. But as we continue on to the Warsong Gulch part of the tournament, we really didn't want to change the meta, but we wanted to tone a few things.
Okay, before we go into the rule changes for Warsong Gulch, I really would like to hear how the seeding is going to be determined, because we talked about it last. We were running through all sorts of ideas and such, and I don't think we reached a consensus. So I'm really excited to hear what you guys have come up with to determine the seeding.
Okay. That is one of the things that hasn't been 100% finalized, but there's a few things on the table. There's a few things. There's randomized seeding. There's two, there'd be some sort of voting onto which teams get seeded.
I don't know about that one.
3, oh yeah, I don't. I'm just telling you everything that was discussed.
No,
that was put on the table.
It was just my first reaction to that is no.
The third thing that was put on the table, because if you're not looking, well, why don't we say this first? If we're not looking at arenas to make the seeding go into Warsong, you have to be creative on how you come up with another way.
Yes.
That's one thing that hasn't been finalized, but one thing that Muskie proposed that was being considered, and I think it's still being considered, is that, but it would change the tournament style drastically. And it's something that I was unaware of because it's more of a League of Legends background style tournament. But once he explained it to me, it made sense, but I also felt like it affected the culture of the bracket, and that's where it clashed with me. So I can explain it well enough at this point. It's a little weird to someone that hasn't explained it or heard it before. So,
well, that would be
basically have you would have your 8, your 12, whatever teams there are. You have all your teams lined up, and before you actually get into bracket mode, there's 2 stages of the Warsong tournament. In this saying that you go with this route. If you go with this route, there would be a group stage mode and there would be a bracket stage mode. In group stage mode, you would be split into divisions, 3 or 4 divisions with, you'd have 4 teams in your division. Yourself and 3 other teams, I should say. So there would be 4 teams per division.
Okay.
Every team in that division would play each team once. And based on how you perform in group play would seed you for Warzone Gulch, the bracket tournament. So let me explain. Let me finish it. Let me finish the thought here because it is something that is weird. I was not aware of this, and it's a totally new style. I'm going to do the best job that I can to explain it because I'm not perfect at explaining it yet. So let's say, for sake of the matter, I want to use some names here just to make the... Well, here, we'll go Team A. I'm on Team A, right? Team A plays Team B, Team C, and Team D. One game each, and you get a point for one game. You get a point for each game that you play. So let's say that you come out and you win 3-0. Well, you are going to be put into the winner side of bracket play when it goes into bracket the next round because your team did well in the group play. Let's say that you go 2-1, or if you go 2-1, you would be put up into bracket play. But if you went 1-2 or 0-3, you would be put into the losers. You would be put into the loser side of the bracket when the tournament started. Now, with that in mind, I think I did a pretty good job of explaining it. I might not have hit it on the head, but that's pretty much the thought process. So if you come out positive in group play, you're going to be on the winning side of the bracket. If you come out negative in group play, you're on the losing side of the bracket. Now, here's the thing. Now, here's what I don't like about it. So you go into bracket play. The winning teams that came out positive in group play. Oh yeah, there's the link in chat for anyone that's in Twitch chat. Muskie just linked it in chat. That's a great explanation, better explanation than I can do if anyone wants to see a different format. So if you come out winning out of group play and you play in bracket, you're going to be seeded into the winning side of bracket play, and the losing teams are going to be already seeded into the losing side of the bracket. So if the losing team, the teams that are on the losing side of the bracket, if they lose a series, they're done. They're out of the tournament.
Okay.
If the winning teams lose a series, they move down to the losers bracket, and they'd have to lose another series.
That answers one of my big questions there.
Personally, I was not in favor of that because for two reasons. One, it would be a lot of games to play.
That was going to be my main concern. When we're looking at something where we have how many teams playing, how many games per series, and now you're basically adding a whole nother series on top of that. I mean, logistically and just time-wise from the teams involved, I mean, that's adding in a whole nother day's worth of commitment. Have you guys given any thought to expanding it to more than one weekend? Are we still at one weekend?
No, the days are going to be set. The days are going to be set. And I think that it is too much. I think it is too many games to play, and that's one of the issues. The second thing that I think is a culture thing for me, personally. Because the tournament last year, I loved the fact, personally, that you sit there and once seeding happened last year, it was based off arenas last year, but the seeding happened, and you kind of knew who you were playing, and you knew you were going to have at least 2 best-of-3 series against a team, and the preparation went into it. It's like, hey, we can look at the matchup, who are we playing, what are we going to be doing differently versus this team versus another team, and not like that wouldn't happen in group play, but it's going to be rapid-fire mode.
And you know what, Living just brought up a good point here, where it's like, think about, just teams traveling from west to east coast in the NFL or vice versa. Like, man, they have that time lag, the time zone change. That really hurts a team. What are you going to do with someone like Living, who's the entire world away and is going to be playing basically in the morning when we're playing at night? You have a lot of other EU players coming over trying to play. I mean, when you're adding this much more in, it seems really prohibitive and, in a sense, unfair to those that aren't in the same time zone as others when the tournament's going to start. Like, has that been taken into consideration at all?
No, that was a great point to bring up, too, because we actually didn't consider that. It was one thing that didn't come up, but that is a great point as well. it would, for people that are playing overseas or in different time zones, the fact that you would know when your series was, they can wake up at that time and kind of commit to being up at that time based on, rather than more of that rapid fire there.
Yeah, because it's not really fair. It's like, okay, you guys, your bracket / group tournament is going to start. I'm sorry, like say Nikosi lives in Sweden. It's going to start at 9 o'clock for the people on the East Coast, but Nikosi, you're going to have to set your alarm for 2:30. You're going to have to drink 8 cups of coffee because your game starts at 3 in the morning. Like I don't know how you reconcile that, but the fewer games that occur, the easier it is to deal with.
I agree, and but at this point, that's still one thing that we're going to have to finalize, because if we don't like that option, we still have to come up with a way to seed the teams at this point.
Yeah, and it seems, especially like all the talk we've had, on the cast and off the cast, the seeding seems to be the most difficult thing. It's not like we have a college basketball season where everyone runs through. Oh, that just gave me a crazy idea, and I know this isn't possible, but what if somehow you worked it out beforehand through war games?
I think that's been considered, but you could do it that way, but that would also be, you'd have to get everyone on for that's another big time commitment, kind of last minute.
Yeah, that's why I said it's a crazy idea, but it just popped into my head real quick. I'm saying with the basketball regular season, and then they get to the NCAA tourney, because in a way, especially when you go on the group and such, it kind of, in a way, fits into that mold.
So at this point, we're still looking for a way for that initial seeding going into Warsong. If we don't, because it seems like that the group play, bracket play, is not going to work out. Even though I think it's a good idea, and like Muskie was saying earlier, it's actually, I think if you have the time to do that, it actually is a solid way. And it's also more entertaining for the people watching the stream, even though it's not as entertaining for the people playing, I think.
In a perfect world, that seems like the best way to do it. But we don't live in a perfect world, and I'm not sure if there's some sort of way to compromise between several different ways. Like if there's a different way to put that sort of lull version of seeding into it. Like Living just said, just keep arenas, it's easy, and so forth. But then it goes back to what you said, and a lot of people in stream have said, it's, in a sense, like people want it to be two separate things, because there are teams that might excel greatly in Warsong Gulch, but arena's not their thing, and vice versa.
Now, I will say, closing up kind of on the seeding right now, because we don't really have that much more at this point. It's still one thing that has to be talked about. One of the last thoughts with arenas was, too, even though we pretty much made it at this point that we didn't want arenas to affect Warsong series, and we didn't really want it to affect seeding. And the other reason why we wanted it to not affect seeding was because you could have 2 or 3 players for teams that really come out and shine in arenas, but collectively as a Warsong Gulch team, it doesn't accurately represent where they should be put as a Warsong Gulch team. So for the series, we're trying to put it in a way that you wouldn't have the Clippers and the Spurs going out in the first round.
I was just about to throw a counterpoint, but that example right there ruined it. Let's move to the next one.
Yeah. So we're still working on an idea here. It's not, the door hasn't been closed, but we're still trying to come up with something there. So I guess moving over to
Warsong Gulch rules?
Yeah, the Warsong side of the field. What some of the big things that we were talking about? Well, you know what? We've been talking about the arena thing. We've been talking about some of the rules going into that, tiebreakers, etc. Why don't I actually tell you what's going to decide who wins a Warsong Gulch series? I think that's the big thing that everyone really wants to hear.
Yeah. We've had multiple
We do have an answer for this.
That.
We do have an answer for this, and that's probably one of the big things everyone wants to hear. The first... Now, let's say this. Let's put this in perspective. To tie a series, whether it's best of 3, best of 5, means that one team has to win one game, one team has to win the other. And in this meta right now, with how Warsong Gulch is and how the rules are that Blizzard has, the third game would have to go 0-0. That means no team caps the entire game. So to put that in perspective, yeah, it can happen. The chance of that happening, well, just put it into perspective there. I'd be surprised how many 0-0 games there are. Let's put it that way.
What were this from last tournament? How many games? Do you have any idea how many ended 0-0? Because I almost, in a way, like if the teams are evenly matched, I feel like that actually could happen.
I think that it could, but with how high... I don't remember, first off, to answer your question.
Mm-hmm.
2, with the change in meta and like the 5 extra stacks to 15 stacks, if you touch an FC, they are dead. Like, at that high of stacks, someone just has to be on them for a second at that high of stacks, and they'll die.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's not impossible, but it's definitely harder now than it was last tournament.
Yeah, the percentages are working in the favor of what you're about to say.
That's not important. You come in a series, whether it's the 0-0 the first game, one team wins one and one team's the third. Okay, you have a tied series. The first thing that's going to be looked at before anything else is which team had more caps in the series. And that was what we were talking about last week or the week before. Which team has more caps in the series will be the first determinant as to which team goes on. Or which team takes the win of the series, which team takes the loss. If the first game goes 0-0 tie, the second game Team A wins 3-0, and the third game Team B wins 1-0. Team A wins the series because they had 3 caps in the second game, and they had a more dominant objective control over the series because of those caps.
I like that.
The second thing is if, let's say, first game goes 0-0. Game 2 goes 2-1 to Team A. Game 3 goes 2-1 to Team B. And there's a tie in caps. Both teams had 3 caps. At that point, there will be overtime games played until somebody wins. Not first cap, someone has to win a game.
Although I will say it would be an insane game to watch. Maybe not play, but like sort of a sudden death. All right, who can get that first cap?
It's going to be who wins the game rather than first cap. And I know that's something that was talked about. And that's pretty much looking like what it's going to be at this point. That looks pretty solid. That looks like something that we've hammered down. We wanted it to be, though, we didn't want the overtime game first because we wanted it to be taken from the series. And in most cases, you can determine from the series which was the more dominant team based off of sheer caps alone and who had the more objective control.
Absolutely.
But if the games need to be played, then they need to be played. And someone has to win.
Now, this brings another point that we talked about earlier with group and bracket seating. How are all of these potentially additional games going to be fit into the overall schedule?
That's something that's going to have to go through the rules committee and something that's going to have to be addressed by MERM and see if this is going to logically work out. But in our minds, that was the fairest way and most culturally accepted that we felt would be applicable for the tournament.
Okay.
So we got to see if that passes through. That's what we want to pass through. If it's not going to pass through, we'll have to make adjustments, but it looks like a really solid stand at this point.
No, I think that's actually a fantastic way to do it. I'm just trying to think of the whole overall. You have so many things to do, so many games to play in a finite amount of time, and it's like, how do you fit all of that in there? Have you guys adjusted the fact that not multiple series will be played at the same time? You're not going to wait until one series is done and then the next can start?
You know, that's... We did talk about that a little bit. We talked about that, but to be completely honest with you, that's not totally in our control right now. I mean,
is that gamers?
That's going to be, scheduling and when the games are played and how they want to manage that. It's going to be more on MERM and more on Gamers League. I mean, we're not running the stream. So that's going to be handled more on their side of when games are played, when they want matchups, are there going to be multiple channels, etc. You know, so that's not something that we have full control over, but it's something that we are, we're going to give our opinion on when the time comes to MERM. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
I was going to say something, but I'm going to refrain myself from stating it. You go ahead and say the next point.
Okay. Well, so why don't I get into some of the other things that we talked about in Warsong? And just for reiteration's sake, we felt that the rules that were already in place for Warsong were very strong. We felt like we didn't need to take anything out. We didn't need to do anything like that. So let me reiterate them. 2 class limit, 2 stealth limit, excluding Guardian Resto Druids, 1 Arms Warrior limit, 1 BM Monk limit, and no Feral Druids. So all of those rules in our mind were valid rules and need to be in the tournament. None of those were changed. Just for reiteration and clarification.
Yeah, I think those are all...
One thing that was talked about as well on the forums that I think that a lot of the community is waiting for an answer for, one of the big things actually we've been considering is how do we want to tone down warriors in arenas without changing the meta? And that's the big key. Yeah, in Warsong Gulch. Mm-hmm. That's the key though right there. Without changing the meta, how do you want to tone down warriors? Because it's warrior Ren damage when you get 2 or 3 satyrs going. Things go out of control. They don't even have to be hitting anyone as long as they're in combat. The Rens are going to be ticking for insane amount of damage. We wanted to find a way to tone that down without changing the meta of the bracket. Because if we change the meta of the bracket, we haven't done our job. We're not doing our job by changing the meta of Warsong Gulch play. Mm-hmm. So we were really lopsided for a while, and we still are. I don't think there's a definite, but I can tell you what we're leaning towards. So the first thing we considered was banning Crusader straight up. Mm-hmm. Banning Crusader, we were like, okay, we could get rid of Crusader, and I think people would be happy about that, but then we said, like, well, what that would say is, like, okay, so from my perspective, when we were making these bans, we're all looking at it like, what's the next best thing that we could do? So then we're like, oh, well, if I'm a warrior, I'm going to swap landslides if I'm going to do that. Now, the difference between Satyr and landslide, there's a few different things. Satyr swapping, you can have the exact same weapon. You could have 3 BOA axes, and Satyr can get a new proc on each one. Landslide, you have to have 3 completely different weapons with the enchant to get the proc. So you'd have to have an axe, a sword, and an NT sword, or something like that. So just for reference's sake, just so people know.
I like how you busted out the NTs for some old school flavor.
Yeah. So, with that in mind, that's kind of how the enchant works. The difference there is Satyr gives 100, Landslide gives 75. So we were thinking, okay, that's going to tone things back about 25. That's going to allow warriors to continue playing their class, have that feel where they're weapon swapping, but it's toned down. We went and tested some things with the enchant. I was able to test that it's on individual weapons. It's not, you can't have the same weapon. So going off of that, one of the things that we noticed immediately that Muskie brought up was like, hey, one thing that's really different with this enchant and Satyr lasts for 15 seconds and Landslide lasts for 12. And when you're sitting there on a warrior that's swapping weapons, yeah, sometimes you get the RNG and you get the procs real early, and you start rolling with doubles. But a lot of the time you come in on the last 5 or 6 seconds of Satyr, which in reality on Landslide's about 2 or 3. And we felt that the duration of Landslide was also negated, so you don't have that extra pressure for that 3 seconds. So then we kind of leaned off that. We're like, well, maybe that's not the best way to approach it. Maybe, the Landslide, it doesn't have that extra few seconds for the warrior to get their damage in. So we took a step back from that. We put it on pause. We're like, okay, what if we allowed Satyr, but you're not allowed to Satyr stack? And you can't Satyr stack at this point. So warriors would be getting 100 attack power. It's going to last 3 seconds longer. You're not allowed to swap. And that's kind of where the point where we're leaning on right now is actually allowing Satyr for warriors, but you cannot get double proc Crusaders. That's kind of where we're leaning on right now, because we felt that you're going to get the proc more with Crusader. You're going to have Crusader up more often. You're going to have it for an extra few seconds when it procs. you're not going to get the double procs, but it's going to help you more, as even the heal from Crusader is a little better from Warriors. Having that 100 attack power, it's going to be proccing more, the consistency's more, but you're not going to be stacking it like you see in pre-mades at this point. And it looks like at that point, that's what we're leaning to.
Now, of course, the first question is going to be, how do you track it? And looking through chat now, it looks like, I'm sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly, but Pseudo Wudo-san is saying that it's easy to track. And of course, we're going back to Arena, so there's easy ways to track that. So the stacking should be quickly recognized.
Oh yeah, I think that anyone that's taking it seriously and is looking for people to abuse this. First off, I don't think people are going to abuse it, but there's going to be people put in place to check if people are abusing it. It's not a hard thing to track. Whatever you enforce is going to be implemented, and people are going to take it seriously. And I think that that's one thing that our people are missing out on. It's really easy to see, oh, look, he has 2 buffs on. But that does mean, hang on, time out. There's a few things we were considering here. So that does mean you're going to have to do some things that you might not have thought of. That means that, okay, you're probably going to have to go in your sword and board set, and you're going to have to change your one-handed weapon to Colossus or Elemental Force. And that there's going to be some things that come up where it's like, well, which weapon do you want to have the Crusader on it? Because you're not going to be able to swap and get another Satyr. There's also, with that in mind too, it's going to be difficult to enforce. There's going to be people that are going to go Crusader into Elemental Force. And that's something that would up the damage. It's not really something that can be tracked, but I don't think it would hurt Warriors. I don't think it would. It's not swapping to another Satyr and getting another attack power buff. So I think you're just gonna have to let that go.
Now, let me ask you this then, Buns. You were talking about how Landslide is similar but shorter duration and such. Why, if Crusader in itself is such a huge issue, and I understand that you're taking away the ability for people to stat Crusader, why not remove Crusader and replace it with Landslide?
We considered both, like I said, and we considered removing Crusader first. Most, from the feedback that we got from people, it felt like, if you're going to do that, even though like you would have an opportunity for double procs, I think most people would prefer just having the standard Satyr.
Well, no. What I was saying, I guess I didn't explain that properly. Yeah, I didn't explain that properly. Like, I understand you want to keep the feel for the meta, but if like the burst and those ticks from that proc are going to be such a huge issue, why not just go with Landslide over Crusader, no stacking, call it a day?
Because you'd be changing the meta then.
So it would be that significant just going from one Crusader to one Landslide?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like where you would go Satyr to Landslide to...
No.
I'm sorry.
I'm doing a terrible job.
I'm missing you on this. Okay.
So just subtract Crusader, right? No one can use Crusader.
Okay, yeah.
Replace it with Landslide. Still no stacking. You just have Landslide.
That wouldn't be enough.
Okay,
I see what you're saying
I was
now.
asking.
It wouldn't be enough. And that's what people were saying, is that, Landslide alone is going to change. If you just let Landslide, it's not going to be enough because you don't have the duration long enough. You're 25 less AP. Warriors are going to need a little bit more to be able to keep the games going. And from what Pseudo's actually said in chat here, it sounds like they actually did some games. JCM played Muskie's team, and it sounds like they implemented the rules we were just talking about, where you prevent stacking of Crusaders and you switch to Elemental Force, and it sounds like the games were toned down and more enjoyable for both teams. So implementing the rules we were just talking about.
Easy to track and made the game more fun, so it looks like you're doing the right thing there.
So, and it looks like that's the way we're going to lean to, and I also don't feel like, if you get a Satyr and you swap to Ele Force, that's manageable damage still, and that also makes the Warrior class still feel like they're swapping to something that's going to give them a little bit more damage, so that it doesn't feel like that their role is being diminished.
Yeah, and I know I saw a post, I think it was from Moko, where it was like, it's kind of part of the way I play the class, where it's, I want to do my weapon swaps, it adds an element to what I'm doing. And I guess that still keeps it there, they can keep that bind on and do what they're doing. It just, not so blatantly overpowered and going to be a detriment to the game.
Yeah. Okay, with that out of the way, that was a big thing that I think everyone wanted an answer for. We don't have too much more here, but the last two that we have are pretty important. Which one do I want to go with first?
Start with
Here, I got it.
second in show, and then move to best in show after.
Okay. The first thing that we came up with here, another thing that was in hot discussion here was what jumps are going to be allowed to be used in the Warsong Gulch tournament. Last year, or this year too, there was a lot of talk about what jumps were going to be used. Last year the rules were you have both teams can use top of tunnel and fence jumps. That was pretty much the rules put in place for the tournament. I think that both teams, or pretty much no one was really opposed to it, but it was something that was brought up again this year, because Murr made a post saying that he felt that the rules are going to stay for next year. It's something that we did want to talk about in these meetings, because we want to see where it would go to and what people's opinions were. It's a little hazy at this point, but what people have come to that we've agreed to at this point is we want jumps to be more acceptable. Here's the thing. It sounds like what the rules are going to be is it's going to be standard jumps that people would use that don't affect line of sight and don't affect people hitting them are going to be applicable.
So I have to ask this right off the back. This is something we talked about in prior cast. But doesn't the top of tunnel midsection, isn't that line of sight? And isn't that, unless you can do the jump, melee can't get to you? Or is that, am I just speaking out and it's like, well, that's not going to be allowed anyway?
You know, the problem with that, or the big, what's the correct way to word that? The issue with what you just said is that you can physically walk up around and not have to do a single jump and get there.
But on actually, I guess on Horde side you can. You don't have to jump on the Tusk anymore. I guess I'll give
Alliance.
that to
You could argue. I guess you could argue Alliance.
Yeah, because I mean it's.
What it sounds like though is that we want to be more acceptable on jumps. We think it's a part of the 19 culture. The other thing that we want to put up too is, like, we all felt that, yeah, there's a time and place for jumps, and there's jumps that it's pretty impressive to see someone pull off. It could be a momentous point of the game. We don't want that taken away. But we also, to go with that, it's also really risky to do certain jumps. And a lot of times there's smarter decisions that can be made, and you sometimes gamble by doing a jump. Because if you fall for the jump, you would go down, etc., and you could be in a bad position, where a lot of times you can just make a smart play and just go through a straight path to wherever you want to go, and it's a smarter, safe move. Your team can go with you, etc. There was some element of that we wanted to keep true to the culture of the bracket.
There's two things, or I'm sorry, finish.
Well, the one thing that we wanted to say is that jumps where it would affect line of sight and, like, people hitting them, we're going to be discriminated, and there hasn't been, like, the actual wording for it hasn't come out yet. We haven't, like, worded it yet, but we pretty much are on the same page. Like, we don't want someone flag carrying behind the Alliance flag room, or outside of the roof, outside of the ramp of the map.
You know what's fucked? That you actually have to put these rules in place because there's going to be an asshole that tries it. Like, it should be common goddamn sense. You're in a legitimate tourney, community-driven. Don't be a dick. But of course you have to put these in place because someone's going to be like, well, it wasn't explicitly stated. But anyway, I digress.
Right. So that's kind of the thought process we want here, because we think it's part of the culture of the bracket. It's unique to the bracket. It adds an element to the game, that risk-reward, that would not be there. There's a lot of jumps that people will use on a daily basis. They may not even consider them a jump, whether it's jumping over the little fence going up on ally ramp, whether it's doing a stump jump, whether it's running up a stump. I guess you could even argue that is some sort of a jump. I mean, that sounds weird. I mean, you really technically are just running up there, but I mean, Where do you draw the line at that point? And we felt that we wanted to make it acceptable for people to use those, but we didn't want people to be exploiting and abusing the map.
Well, and I think it's important too, because one of the goals is to like kind of maintain what the bracket is. And let's be honest, jumps have been part of the 19 bracket. I want to say since Painade made them popular as a motherfucker and just ran circles around everybody. I mean, that has been a staple of the 19s for so long that it would be really weird to have a 19 tournament and it's like, sorry, no jumps. But it is that fine line, like you have to walk where what jumps are good, what jumps are bad, what are we going to allow, what are we going to not. Oh, and the other thing I was going to bring up, what Wodo and I think Living were talking about, is that certain races will have inherent advantages just based on the space that their character takes up. But doesn't that also come in and be like, well, if you know this is going to be part of the tournament, make your decisions on what race you want to play accordingly and what role you're going to be playing?
Yeah, and you know what, going off of that too with what you just said, we're also going to allow for goblin jumps and disengages and all those things to be accounted for as well, as long as they don't counteract what we had said or put you in a spot that where line of sight becomes an issue and you can't get up there melee without doing the jump. Without doing the jump, that's the big thing. Top of tunnel, you can run around. You know what I mean? You can run around.
Can you think of any off the top of your head that are just blatant?
Yeah, on top of the saw on Warsong. Or in the back corner of the Horde base, you can also get up on the lumber mill. You can get behind the ally fence and behind the ally base. I believe that you can also do the same on Horde, and you can get on top of the Horde wall on a Horde base. So we're trying to negate those jumps from being implemented in those. I mean, at that point, I say exploit, but I mean, where do you draw the line? We're trying to negate those boundaries from being abused. How about
and you know what I would say, too? Like, Living is saying in chat right now, like, make a video of saying which jumps are allowed, which I think is a great idea, but also, I would be like, common sense. If in your gut you're like, oh, I don't know, dude. I'm not sure if this is really right, but I think it might be. You know it's not. Yeah. Like, you know inherently which ones you should be doing and which ones you shouldn't be doing.
Yep. So I guess final note.
And wait, one more thing I want to answer Cogbrew. You're right, newer people won't know the jumps. And in a sense, this is unfair to those newer people. And I think a lot of what's being done by HB and the Rules Committee is to make this as fair as possible. But jumps are part of the culture, and if they're going to be competing in this tournament, it behooves them to learn those jumps. It's not like we're going to go into, say, play basketball post when the three-pointer was invented, but we were only playing 2 years before, so we're like, nah, dude, we're just shooting twos. No, you have to adapt and start shooting three-pointers.
Maybe there will be a video put out or something, or maybe the wording will be good enough to the point where we have a definite answer, but that's something that can be considered, so definitely take your advice there from Stream Chat. Consider that as well. But moving off that point, I think we covered that. This is something that I didn't think of and that Muskie brought up, and it's just something I hadn't thought. It's something I've thought about, but it's not something I thought about coming into what the rules were going to be for the Cup. So, this is huge, and it's who gets Horde or Ally. That's a huge part of this entire tournament. You know, for obvious reasons, there's reasons why you want to have one map or the other, whether it be for peeling melee off of you, whether it be for using the top of tunnel, using the tot for Horde side, using the fence jumps, etc. So, who gets that Horde or Ally side, how's that going to be determined? It's pretty much going to be determined by a 1-1 for both teams, and which team gets the first or second hasn't been decided yet, but the third game is going to be decided by a coin flip. So there will be a very fair way on to balance out who gets that third or odd game, whether it be the third or the fifth game. There will be a very fair way to determine which team gets that. Because obviously people are concerned about that, something that I didn't immediately think of, but I'm very happy that was brought up to the table. Did you catch that, Yubi? I'm not sure. Or...
I got it.
You didn't get it. That's okay.
No,
It happens. We were talking. Okay, so one thing that we said is that Muskie is bringing up. He brought up the point: who gets the Hoarder ally side of the map?
Oh no, I did not. Yes, I should have been paying more attention. I'm sorry.
So what it's going to be is that each team's going to get it once or twice, depending if it's 3 or 5, and then the last game's going to be a coin flip. Because there's obvious reasons that you want both sides of the map. And you know, people always point to Horde too for having the better advantage, but I'll tell you what, especially in the meta that we're in right now, there's reasons that you actually want the allies for the ally side of the map with kiting with the druid, because it does that fence. You can't really get through that fence as a melee, so there's definitely some benefits there as well too.
But also, you can't jump over the fence and get to a little tunnel spot.
Yeah,
as well. So you
right,
you know, there's
both
pros
games.
and cons to each. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's really the main things that we talked about here, and I think that they're all pretty essential things to talk about. But that's pretty much all I got right now. So, you know, there's 3 more days to talk about it. If someone's got some points that they liked here, can always bring it up on the TI forums. If someone still has something they want to address, bring it up on the TI forums. But as of now, those are the changes we're looking to make and at least put into the draft. So that's what I got for you guys, and I think that that's a good update nonetheless as to where we are with the Twin Cup.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I'm glad that this was a topic you chose, because obviously just looking at chat, it's something that's been on a lot of people's minds, and this should hopefully promote discussion and help us come up with the best set of rules to make the best tournament possible.